Here's the trials bike that busted my knee. Hey there, you're watching Dirt Bike Channel. I'm your host Kyle Brotherson, and today I figured I'd give you a glimpse at the home wrecker itself. This is the Gas trials bike that broke my leg. Actually ruptured my ACL. Technically it wasn't the bike's fault, it was my fault, but I'm still calling this the home wrecker because it's made the last couple of months of my life pretty crappy. Stick around. In all seriousness, I have no animosity towards this trials bike. This is my first trials bike, and this is what I would probably call an entry-level trials bike. This is the Gas Contact 250 ES. The ES stands for electric start. If you look on Gas's website, this is kind of listed down on the bottom of their trials bikes. It's not one of their racing trials bikes, but it's my first one and I wanted to get into it. One of the things that kind of drew me towards this bike is it's a little bit more geared towards trail riding. It's a trials bike, but it's geared a little bit to more mountain riding and trail riding, as you can see by this removable seat right here. This seat can come out of the bike or come off the bike. The fact that this has electric start was really key to me. I thought before I injured my knee earlier, well, about 65, 62, 63 days ago, while riding this trials bike, my thought was on some of these camping trips that I was planning on going on, this would be a decent bike for my wife to actually just go on a trail ride with me and the boys and my daughter, because it has the seat. And that was kind of my thought, is that I would be able to get my wife out with me because it would have the seat and she could kind of sit down on it and have a really, really low to the ground bike, a really light bike to be able to go. And then honestly, I was gonna try to practice a ton on it and do a bunch of balance drills and everything, because the best enduro riders in the world, seems like a lot of those guys started on trials bikes. And so I thought, you know what, it might be a good idea to get one. And although this bike was the bike that I was riding when I hurt my knee and blew out my ACL, complete tear on my ACL and a partial tear on my MCL, I still don't regret getting the bike. It was just kind of a fluke accident where I was trying to get up onto two different rocks and carry the wheel. You know, there was a rock that was about, I don't know, a little bit taller than the front tire, and then I was gonna carry it onto another rock and then hop off the other side. And the bike was coming over on me. I stuck my right foot down, probably had my knee extended, and boom, pop goes the ACL. But a little bit about the bike. Again, this is an electric start bike, which is uncharacteristic in trials bikes, and I know it makes the bike a little bit heavier. I'll roll in the weight. The weight ended up with 174 pounds full of fuel. That's how I measure these bikes, which equals 79 kilos. Now on Gas's website, they list this bike as what, 69.5 kilograms. But they say that's the dry weight, which means I must have put 22 pounds in the bike, or 10 kilos of fuel, oil, and coolant. So they list the bike at 69 kilos, 69.5 dry, and I measured this bike out at 79 kilos or 174.5 pounds, completely loaded out with full fuel, full of oil, and full of coolant. So the bike is actually very, very light. It is the lightest bike that I've ever weighed, but again, I was weighing full-size dirt bikes. So this is a trials bike, a little bit different deal. When you're on this thing, it feels like a mountain bike. Riding a trials bike is such a different experience. I mean, you have to experience it to actually kind of know what I'm talking about, but it's a totally different thing than riding a regular enduro dirt bike. So as you notice, obviously the fender is very floppy. There's a lot of different things. It's got different tires. It's got different steering. When you first get on a trials bike like this, you notice that the steering goes like twice as far from lock to lock as another bike. And one of the things that I did immediately is I started doing full lock turns with this bike in my driveway. I was doing full lock turns on the dirt bikes, but you can do a full lock turn on this, and you're turning so much tighter that initially it's harder, but then as you realize that you've got the wheel turned almost at a 90-degree angle, it's almost easier to do a full lock turn on these guys. You can do a full lock turn on this trials bike pretty much inside of the diameter way inside of the diameter that you would on a full-size dirt bike, because it turns so far. But because it turns so far, you can kind of be on the front brake and the back brake and kind of pinch the momentum of the bike against that front wheel. So it's really, really cool. Some of the other things about the bike that I really like, it comes with a hydraulic clutch, so it's very light, very easy to pull that clutch, and it's very smooth and very fluid. So I've liked that. This bike also has 6 speeds, so it's a 6-speed gearbox. The first 4 gears are kind of like the trials gears, so first through fourth are very low. Like first gear is unbelievably low. It's lower than any other bike that I've ever been on. Obviously, it's a trials bike, so you'd expect that. So that first gear is very, very low. Second gear, third gear, they're all very low. And then when you get to the gap between 5th and 6th gear is, 4th gear and 5th gear is pretty big. That 5th gear and 6th gear is kind of like, the gears that you would transition between like different riding areas. So I'm not a big trials guy, but I do believe that first gear, second gear, and third gear are the gears that you'd be using when you're doing competitive trials. I don't know how much guys are doing like second gear and third gear in trials, but I imagine that they are. So those are some of the highlights that I noticed. This actually has a 3.5 liter gas tank, which equates to about 0.92 gallons. So it's got a little bit bigger gas tank than some of the other trials bikes. And then you've got the seat, which is removable. Now, I haven't found that there were any situations that I felt like I was in as a complete beginner and I'm just trying to go out there and mess around on some rocks and some K-rails and some different things. I haven't found any situations where I felt like I needed to remove the seat. So I've just left the seat on for all the different things that I've been doing, because I gas myself on this thing. I get completely gassed and I end up sitting my butt down on the seat, kind of right back here, because you sit down here and it's like you got your feet bent too far. So I'll end up kind of sitting right back here to conserve some energy. And another thing that I did is I swapped the controls, because when this comes from the factory, your start button is over here and your kill button is over here. And so I swapped it around so it would be more typical. So I've got my electric start on the throttle side and I've got my kill on the clutch side. So I had to swap that around. The tires come as a tubeless setup. It isn't like tubeless from New Tech, it's just a tubeless setup. And I've actually bent the back rim here in a couple places, which is really interesting because I didn't know that I was doing anything that crazy, but apparently I have been slamming this thing into rocks enough that I've bent the back wheel. The front wheel isn't bent at all, but again, it's really cool because everything is super tucked up. So this bike, when it's in the back of the truck, it looks like a mountain bike because it's got a very, very narrow profile. The triple clamps are the widest thing on this bike. Nothing else extrudes beyond the triple clamps. The pipe is tucked up in really tight. Everything's super, super tight. Very small back rotor, a small front rotor, because it doesn't have to have crazy braking at massive speeds. It's going to be always pinning you at slow speeds. That's the whole idea with the trials bike, as you guys know. So this is my first trials bike. It's a great thing to learn balance skills. And something that I did notice as a guy coming over from enduro, I was masking a lot of the stuff that I can do as far as like getting over logs and getting over rocks and everything. I was masking a lot of that stuff with just using momentum because certain things that I was able to do pretty easily on a regular enduro bike are very hard on this when you're doing it in first gear. I find that there are a number of things that I want to do on this bike that I can't really do without stabbing a foot down unless I'm in second gear on this bike. And third gear on this bike makes it even easier because then I'm carrying even that much more momentum and speed. But if I want to do it with just using the technique, just in first gear on this bike, some of the things are actually harder to do on this bike in first gear because you're going so much slower, which means it's all about clutch control and throttle control and balance and those types of things. I do have some videos that will be coming out soon where Tyler and I go out and we ride a nasty trail that is dubbed Satan's Crack. That's the name that was affectionately given this trail, where we ride it first on our enduro bikes. I'm riding the 250XE that's right over there. And then we come back and we do it on these trials bikes. Tyler has one just like this. And some of the things were easier. I gotta adjust that. Some of the things were easier to do on the trials bike and some of the things were easier to do on the enduro bike. So it was just kind of really, really different. So it's a really fun spin on enduro riding, and it's just totally different, totally different. But it's at least before I tore my ACL, unfortunately, it was helping me on my balance. It was helping me on my clutch control and just slowing everything down. And I think when you slow things down, my experience is you learn a ton. Now, it's just been a fun thing to kind of enjoy. I probably have put somewhere around, I don't know, 10 hours on the bike. It doesn't have an hour meter, but I would just go out and ride it for 45 minutes or an hour near my house and just kind of get used to the bike. So I'll have more footage coming out on this thing coming up here fairly soon. And then once, next year comes around and November comes around, I'll start to use this bike a little bit more. You do have a backup kickstart on this thing, but it has the electric start, which is super, super nice. And although it weighs a little bit more by having an electric start, I don't really feel like I'm giving up a ton because I'm not like a competition trials rider. So the extra, I don't know, 5 pounds or something, or even if it was 10 pounds that the bike is carrying extra by having an electric start, for me, it's worth it, So we talked about the weight, we talked about how big of a gas tank it has, we talked about how it has 6 speeds, hydraulic clutch, hydraulic brakes, pretty cool bike, and it's been fun to kind of cut my teeth on as a enduro rider that's wanting to kind of see what these trial bikes are all about. So anyway, if you like these videos, please remember to like the videos, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to support me, you can go over to patreon.com. I've got a page over there where you can support every month, or you can just go to dirtbikechannel.com/parts and order your parts through the affiliate links that I have there. And that's pretty much it, guys. So until the next video, do some riding for me because I can't do any riding until November. So take care, guys.